Hey guys, Miss Osuna here, and today we are going to do a back view pose. This back view is advanced, and we are going to have our weight anchored on the right side of our page. And also, she's going to be looking slightly right, but it is from the back. So we're going to be doing foreshortening, and we're going to be playing around with our actual, excuse me, angles. Excuse me. So we're getting started, and we always start off with headspace first, and we do our oval and straight line, and then you can measure off the headspace. How tall is it from the top to the bottom? What's the height of that headspace? And then mark those headspaces all the way down. I'm doing it here, of course, because at work you don't always have time to go grab a ruler or sit in front of a computer. So I'm doing it with a piece of paper I just ripped off the side of my page. You can see there, and I just measured the first oval and folded it in half so I can get that even measurement. But I'm just marking the head spaces. We want our 9 head spaces. I typically do 10 because I definitely am not from the West Coast, where 9 is definitely more common in the whole industry in general. But on the East Coast, which is where I'm from, we do 10. So I'm going to do 10. All that means is for the ankle, instead of it being at 8, I'm moving my ankle to 9. But you can totally do 9 and just follow along, and your ankle will be at 8 as well, and your toe will be at 9. I'm just going to drop my ankle down lower, and then my toe will be lower. All right, so now we are all set up, and of course, you want to know that 1.5 from the top to the bottom, right in our center line. That is our shoulder location. So if I measure with a piece of paper the top of the head down to 1.5, just like a ruler almost. But again, you don't always have time to go grab a ruler. And then I just fold that paper in half, bring those two marks together, and then I know where the center of that space is. So I'm just going to write here 1.5 head spaces. So now I have 2 little pieces of paper that I can quickly reference. So next, let's do some guidelines. And remember, guidelines and spaces, this all helps you to move fast. If you do this same thing over and over again, it'll be muscle memory. You won't even have to think about setting your croquis up. Then you'll be able to intuitively just add in the details, even without having to start with all of the lines at some point. It just takes repetition. So our shoulder is higher on the left, and our waist is higher on the right. That's our typical S as in Sam, S curve for the fashion industry. And now I'm taking my reference and I can measure because my first curve is on the left. Now I know how wide the shoulders should be. Again, these are guidelines if you want your shoulders more narrow or wider. That's totally up to you. Okay, so our shoulder and our shoulder blade are going to be having the same angle when we get there to the shoulder blade. And then our waist and our crotch will be having the same angle. So 4.25 is the elongated crotch. And remember that is because she is 6 feet tall. Once you get this down, once again, this is going to be really easy and second nature. So the bigger curve is on the right side below the waist because it's the opposite above the waist. And the left side is going to be flatter. That dynamic helps to give your croquis attitude, and that's really important. So now here I can reference that waist and know where to put the curves. So you can start and do your curves just on the outside without the reference. And then once you are finished with your drawing from instinct, then you can go back and measure. And when I say drawings from instinct, I mean those outer torso lines and curves. I did them first and then I went back to measure second. You do want to double check to see that you are getting what you want, but your measurements can change based on what you want. So now we have in our bikini bottoms and we're dragging down our line from the center of the leg opening. And again, yours would stop at 9 if you're 9 heads. Mine will stop at 10. But everything else above the ankle is the same. So your knee is still the knee at 6. Kneecap is on the left there. Outside of our leg is on the right. And literally keep in mind, I'm putting my ankle socket at number 9. Calf muscle starts there, high on the right side, and it's lower on the left side. So keep that in mind. This is our back view. And as you're dragging down your long parenthesis shapes with soft curves, just make sure that you let your arm go down with gravity. Don't do tiny little line segments. Then pull out that kneecap just a tiny little bit more, just by emphasizing going around that knee socket. Now we're coming downward for the back view, slightly back view of our foot. We're twisting here. This is what makes this more angled and a little bit more advanced and more sophisticated. Slightly twisting here. So you have your frowns and you have your parenthesis shapes for the back of our ankle. And now as you go down diagonally, her foot is going to slightly be twisted to the left. So we're going down, and now we can add that triangle, and this is that foreshortening effect. So we just need the tip of our toe, and that's that triangle shape. It depends on your angle, how much you've twisted the toe. That depends on how much of the triangle you'll see. And if you see any of the foot on the right side at all, you may or may not. So those are the determining factors based on the pose. And now let's do the next leg. So find the center of your leg opening. This time we're going to have the left leg away from the right. So again, the knee goes the same way the crotch. So I'm dragging that guideline to the left, and guidelines help you to go much faster instead of trying to intuitively guess where it's going to fall. And you can see that knee dropping on the left. That helps the right side to be that anchor leg. All right, so now let's go on ahead and get leg number 2 finished. So leg number 1 is right there at our axis balance line. And leg number 2 is to the left of our balance line on my page by about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. And then once again, we're putting the ankles in the same location. So this will help to add to that foreshortening effect. And that'll help the knee to feel like it's popped out and truly bent. And now we're repeating the same process that we did for our first foot. And keep in mind, I just want the second foot to finish a tiny, teeny bit higher than the first. And by tiny, teeny bit, I mean 1/8 of an inch. That is, again, that foreshortening effect. So the kneecap is lower on leg 2, but then the ankles come back together. But then the bottom of the foot is just a little bit lower, and that's how we can fool the eye. And then just repeat the process to draw in the back view of our high heel shoe in the same way we did for shoe number 1. All right, so now that we have that, I'm going to erase just a little so you can really see some of the details here. And my bootleg eraser, I don't recommend this basic grammar school eraser. Definitely not. So I'm going to go and find my real eraser. You can use whatever works for you, but this does not work for me. So I'm going to be changing that very shortly. Okay, we're going to sneak our arm in on the right side, and we're going to have it hiding behind the hip. And again, that just adds to the dynamic. You could also put it where the hand is on the hip. I mean, you can do so many things, but I'm going to be choosing to hide it behind the hip, so that way you focus on the details of this garment from the back view. So maybe she'd be wearing a pair of jeans that have a cool pocket detail back there. That would be the reason for putting the arm strategically behind her hip. Choose what works for you based on your garment design. Of course, that is always the determining factor. Make sure you follow the guideline of your elbow is at the waist area and your wrist is at the crotch. So if you have those in general, your sketches will be in proportion. And when we're doing arm number 2, because this is looking longer, I'm just going to double check. Go back to your center line. Shoulder is at 1.5, and then the elbow is at 3. So just measure from that center line. And then your lower portion of the arm from the elbow to wrist is 3 to 4.25. So you can go back and measure just to be sure that you're getting what you want, and you'll know where to put your wrist socket and your elbow socket. Finish off with a little tiny bit of the face on the right side after you finish off the back of this hand. And once you have just the tiniest bit of the face on the right side, then you could even decide if you wanted to lower your head. So the face, because she's turned downward, it starts lower in the neck. So that soft parenthesis shape on the right side starts underneath the neck because she is turned her head downward. And that would be where you would start to see some of her facial features if she were turned a lot more. In this case, she is not turned enough for you to actually see the profile, but it just gives a hint of the reality of where her face is. Hair is going to likely be covering all of that detail, but I just want to put it in so you know what to do. Okay, that's it for this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you next time.